Penguin Random House Audio presents Revenge in Rubies, a Harriet Gordon mystery, by A.M. Stuart. Read for you by Katharine Lee Mcewan. This book is dedicated to the memory of my father, an officer of the British Army from 1945 to 1957. I think he would have enjoyed this story. Chapter 1. St. Thomas House, Singapore, Friday, 12th of August, 1910. Beneath the floor of a cellar in Hilldrop Crescent, Camden Road, the mutilated and battered body of a woman, which had been buried in quicklime, was found. The body was that of Mrs. Cora Crippen, a music hall singer of American nationality, professionally known as Belle Elmore. Her husband, Hawley Harvey Crippen, an American dentist, is suspected to be the murderer, and a full description of him and a young French woman named Leneve, with whom he disappeared, was circulated. Harriet Gordon paused in buttering her toast. "We know all this," she said. "Yes, get to the exciting bit," Julian and Harriet's ward, Will Lawson, put in. "How did Inspector Drew arrest him?" The Reverend Julian Edwards regarded the boy from over the top of his glasses. "Stop feeding the cat under the table, Will," he said. "I can see what you are doing." A slight colour stained the boy's cheeks, and he picked up the spoon to crack the top of his egg, without making eye contact with his guardian. Julian took a bite of his toast, shook out and refolded the morning's copy of the Straits Times to continue reading the article headed "Sensational Arrest on an Allen Liner." He scanned the article and continued. Disguised as pilots, Inspector Drew, accompanied by 2 policemen, boarded the Montrose from a rowing boat. Crippen was walking the deck with the ship's surgeon. He exclaimed, "3 pilots are coming on board. Isn't this unusual?" The doctor did not reply. Inspector Drew walked past Crippen and made sure of his man. Then he said, "Crippen, I want you—" A frantic rapping at the front door interrupted the dramatic account. "Oh, bother," Harriet grumbled. "Please see who it is, Hua Jean." Hua Jean cast her employer a baleful glance. She, too, had been listening to the gripping account of the arrest of the notorious Dr. Crippen. The household's Armagh never hurried anywhere, and it seemed an age before she returned with a note in her hand. "Who was at the door?" Harriet asked, returning to the serious business of finishing her own rapidly cooling boiled egg. Hua Jean shrugged and handed Harriet a sealed envelope. "For you, ma'am." Harriet broke the seal and withdrew the single sheet of paper, embossed with The Cedars, Blenheim Road, Singapore. "It's from Priscilla Nolan," she said. Julian returned to studying the newspaper. "Is she the one from the tennis club?" "Yes," Harriet said without looking up from the missive. "I occasionally partner her in doubles." "Oh, my." Julian looked up. "Problem?" Pris writes, "My dear Harriet, please come at once. There has been a tragic accident, and I would welcome your advice and the spiritual comfort of your brother, as we must see how best to break the news to Jack." Julian pushed his glasses back up his nose. "Oh dear, do you suppose Jack's father has fallen ill or met with an accident?" "She doesn't say. We should go to her, Julian." She passed her brother the note and he scanned it. "The summons sounds urgent, Harry. Let me fetch my bag. I may be called upon in a professional capacity." He left the following words unspoken. Generally, a minister of religion would be called upon to administer the sacraments for the sick or dying. Will, who had been watching them with wide eyes, said, "Jack Nolan's staying with Mitchell and his family at their beach villa in Katong for the month." Harriet cast her ward a sharp glance, detecting the underlying note of envy in his voice. Unfortunately for Will, no invitations to pass a few weeks at a beach villa during the long holidays had come his way, and his best friend John Simpson had sailed home to England for the break, making it a long, lonely time for the boy. Julian and Harriet had talked about a few days' sojourn at the beach before school resumed in late August, but the weeks had slipped away, and along with them, Will's hope of a summer idyll by the sea. Julian folded the paper and rose to his feet. "Huajin, please can you ask Aziz to hail down a gharry for us?" The Ama rolled her eyes and assumed her expression of long suffering before leaving the room, muttering to herself. Harriet and Julian exchanged amused glances. The grumbling was all pretense. Huajin had proved time and again that she had a good heart and an unspoken loyalty to everyone at St. Tom's House. But only Will regularly saw the softer side of the Ama. Chapter 2. The Cedars, Friday, 12th of August. The Colonel's lady lay spread-eagled on her bed, almost lost in the meringue confection of white linen, lace and net, now made grotesque by the dark, reeking bloodstains that marred the pristine bedclothes. Inspector Robert Curran of the detective branch of the Straits Settlements Police Force had been a soldier and a policeman for most of his adult life, and he thought that nothing could horrify him. However, the sight of Mrs. Sylvie Nolan's half-naked corpse turned his stomach. She wore a nightdress of expensive muslin, a once pretty thing trimmed with ribbons and lace, but the fight that had wrecked the room and claimed her life had seen the flimsy garment ripped almost in half. He didn't need the police surgeon, Dr. Ewan Mackenzie, to tell him that Sylvie had died from a blow to her head. Several blows, rendering the question of which one had actually killed her academic. Whoever had committed this act had hit her repeatedly and with great force, using some sort of heavy object. Steeling himself, he leaned over to examine what was left of her face. He had never met Sylvie Nolan in life, but there had been photographs on a table in the front hall of the house, and he had taken a moment to study what looked to be a recent wedding photograph. Lieutenant Colonel Nolan, magnificent in his regimental dress uniform, and his much younger wife, in silken orange blossoms. She had been beautiful, a beauty that went beyond mere youthful prettiness. Even in the sepia tones of the photograph, Curran had been struck by the classic bone structure of the face, the perfectly proportioned nose, the large, heavy-lashed eyes, the perfect complexion, and a full, sensuous mouth. Now all that loveliness had been reduced to a bloody pulp. Her hand lay palm up on the ruined sheets, the fingers curled in a curiously vulnerable gesture. He picked her hand up, and it hung limply in his grip, the skin devoid of warmth. In this climate, the presence, or not, of rigor mortis told him very little. There were bruises on her arm, clearly visible on the pale skin beneath the torn, flimsy material of her nightdress. The lobe of her right ear, which had escaped the battering, was torn and bloodied, as if something, probably an earring, had been ripped from it. He gently laid her hand back on the bed, in the position he had found it, and straightened. He had seen enough, and the doctor could verify the rest. "Cover her," he ordered. Constable Ernest Greaves set his photographic equipment to one side and used one of the large bath towels which lay neatly folded on the washstand to cover the bloody mess. Even the phlegmatic Greaves had gone pale, his lips tightly compressed and a sheen of sweat, not due entirely to the humidity, shone on his brow. Curran blew out a breath and stepped back from the bed. With the body now hidden from view, the room resumed some semblance of normality, or at least as normal as it could be given the upended furniture and broken ornaments, and the presence of the late woman's husband, Lieutenant Colonel John Nolan, commanding officer of the 1st Battalion.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?